Hey guys, tonight we begin with something a little different. A story that balances on the edge of mystery and inspiration. It's about clocks, yes, but not just any clocks. This is the tale of a man who built time with his hands, and then one day stopped it. We're diving into the clockmaker who stopped time. Forget everything you know about gears, pendulums, or dusty shops you pass on narrow streets. This story isn't about fixing watches. It's about fixing people. And maybe, if you're listening closely, fixing yourself. So before you settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy the kind of stories I tell here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. Because tonight, time itself will bend. The story begins in a town most maps forgot. A place where cobblestone streets twisted like puzzles, and every window seemed to watch you walk by. At the end of the narrowest street, an alley that felt more like a scar, there stood a clock shop. The sign above the door was faded, almost unreadable, and the glass in the windows carried a permanent fog. People said the shop had been there forever, but no one could remember the last time they saw someone walk in or out. Inside lived a man known only as Elias, the clockmaker. No one knew his last name. No one knew his age. His hair was a storm of white, his eyes a quiet blue that seemed to see more than they should. Elias rarely spoke, but when he did, it was as if each word carried the weight of hours, days, lifetimes. His shop was filled with clocks, tall grandfather clocks with wooden faces and brass weights, tiny pocket watches in glass cases, their ticking like whispers in a crowded room, and in the back, covered in dust, clocks that no longer worked, strange, incomplete, as though waiting for something only he could provide. But here's the part that unsettled everyone. No two clocks in Elias's shop ever agreed on the same time. One would strike 12, another would mark 3, another would stop at 6 and never move again. People laughed and called it chaos, but Elias only smiled. He once told a boy who asked why the clocks were all different. Because people's lives don't tick the same, my boy. Some move fast, some drag slow, some stop altogether. Time isn't what the clock says, it's what the heart feels. The town ignored him, mostly. But there were rumors. They said people who stepped into his shop came out changed. A merchant once claimed he had gone in to fix a broken pocket watch and left realizing he hadn't spoken to his son in years. The very next morning, he reconciled with him. Another woman swore that after Elias repaired her clock, she finally found the courage to leave a loveless marriage. Strange coincidences? Maybe. Or maybe Elias wasn't just repairing clocks, but repairing lives. One rainy evening, something happened that no one in town could explain. A boy, thin, soaked, with eyes wide as lanterns, appeared at the door of Elias's shop. The boy's name was Samuel, and he carried nothing but a broken clock in his hands. It wasn't just broken, it was shattered. The glass was gone, the gears bent, the hands missing. It looked like junk, but Samuel clutched it as though it were the most precious thing in the world. Elias opened the door before the boy even knocked, as if he had been expecting him. The boy stepped inside, dripping water onto the wooden floor, and placed the broken clock on the counter. "Can you fix it?" Samuel asked, his voice cracking. Elias leaned forward, studying the wreckage. "This clock has been through a war," he whispered. "Why is it so important to you?" Samuel hesitated. Then slowly, he explained. "It belonged to my father. He passed last winter. This is all I have left of him. And when it broke, I felt like I lost him all over again." For the first time in years, Elias's expression changed. Something flickered across his face, something Samuel couldn't name. Sadness, memory, recognition. Without a word, Elias picked up the broken clock and carried it to the back of the shop. Samuel waited. Hours passed. The rain outside stopped, and the moon climbed high. All around him the clocks ticked, each to their own rhythm, their own heartbeat. It was maddening, like being inside 1,000 conversations at once. Finally, Elias returned, but he wasn't holding the broken clock. He was holding something else. A clock Samuel had never seen before. It was perfect. Polished brass, glowing wood, gears that seemed alive. But what struck Samuel most wasn't how it looked. It was how it felt. As if this clock wasn't just keeping time. It was holding it, containing it. "This isn't my father's clock," Samuel whispered. "No," Elias said softly. "This is yours." Samuel didn't understand, but before he could ask, Elias placed the clock gently into his hands. And the moment he touched it, the world outside stopped. The rain, the ticking, even the moonlight. Everything froze. Only Elias and Samuel moved, breathing in a silence so heavy it felt alive. Samuel's heart pounded. What happened?" Elias leaned close, his voice almost a secret. "Time, my boy, isn't broken. It's only waiting for someone brave enough to carry it. And that's where we'll pause for tonight. Because Samuel's story, the story of how a boy with nothing became the keeper of something greater than time itself, is just beginning. If you're still with me, let me know in the comments what you think Elias meant by that last line. Was he testing Samuel, or was he giving him a gift that could change the world? Samuel stood frozen, the strange clock heavy in his trembling hands. The silence around him pressed like a weight, thick and unbroken. He looked up at Elias, desperate for answers. "What do you mean?" Samuel asked. His voice echoed strangely in the stillness, as though the world itself was listening. Elias's gaze was steady. "This clock doesn't measure hours or minutes. It measures moments. It responds to the heart of the one who carries it." Samuel blinked, his mind racing. "You mean I can control time?" Elias shook his head gently. "No, not control. You can hold it. Slow it down so you can see what others miss. Pause it when the world moves too fast. But be careful, boy. Time is not a toy. It is the fabric of life itself. And when you hold it too tightly, it frays." Samuel stared at the glowing gears inside the clock. Each tick pulsed like a heartbeat, yet the world outside remained frozen, unmoving. "Why me?" Samuel whispered. "Because," Elias said, his eyes glinting, "you still believe time has meaning. Most people squander it, chasing hours, wasting days. But you carried a broken clock as if it were treasure. That means you understand something most people forget. That time is life." For a long moment, Samuel said nothing. He thought of his father, his laughter, the stories he used to tell by the fire, the way he fixed broken toys with hands that were never still. And he thought of how quickly all of it had vanished, stolen by an illness that no clock could measure. "I don't want to lose anyone else," Samuel admitted, his throat tight. "If this clock can help me, I'll take it." Elias studied him carefully. "You will, one day, have to choose how to use it. Every gift has its cost." Before Samuel could ask what that meant, Elias clapped his hands together. The sound cracked like thunder in the silence, and suddenly the world lurched back into motion. Rain hammered on the windows again. The clocks resumed their chaotic ticking. A dog barked outside. Samuel gasped, as though surfacing from deep water. But the clock in his hands ticked differently. Smooth, steady, alive. Samuel left the shop that night with the strange clock tucked close to his chest. When he glanced back, the shop seemed darker, as though Elias had already vanished into shadow. The boy didn't sleep. He sat on his bed, staring at the clock, listening to its soft ticking. Every time his heart beat faster, the gears inside seemed to glow brighter. And then, without meaning to, he tried it. He whispered, "Stop." The hands froze. The candle by his bed stopped flickering. The rain on the roof held in midair. Even his breath felt suspended, caught in a perfect stillness. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. "Start," he whispered again. The world rushed back. Over the next days, Samuel experimented. He learned that the clock only responded when his intentions were pure, when he truly needed time to pause, not when he was just curious. He stopped time to save a sparrow that had flown into a window. He froze a moment to snatch a child out of the path of a runaway cart. Each time, the world stilled like glass, and each time, he returned it without anyone noticing. But Samuel noticed something troubling. Every time he used the clock, a small crack appeared on its glass face. Barely visible at first, but slowly multiplying. He remembered Elias's words. When you hold it too tightly, it frays. Weeks passed, and word spread of strange happenings in town. People whispered about accidents narrowly avoided, about moments where danger seemed to vanish at the last second. They didn't know it was Samuel, but Elias knew. One evening, the old clockmaker appeared at Samuel's door. "You've been using it," Elias said, his tone neither angry nor surprised. Samuel nodded, clutching the clock protectively. "I'm helping people. Isn't that what it's for?" Elias sighed, stepping inside. His eyes fell on the cracks spreading across the clock's glass. "Every time you change the flow of time, you take on its burden. Those cracks aren't in the clock, Samuel. They're in you. The clock is only showing you what's happening." Samuel frowned. He didn't feel different. But then, in the mirror by the door, he caught his reflection. For the briefest moment, his eyes looked older. That night Samuel lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Was Elias right? Was he trading pieces of his own life just to save fleeting moments? And if so, was it worth it? He thought of his father. He thought of the people he had saved. He thought of the cracks, the reflection, the weight of the ticking clock. And deep inside, a question began to grow. Not could he keep using it, but should he? Samuel woke the next morning to the sound of the clock, ticking softly on his nightstand. The cracks in its glass seemed sharper now, as though they had grown overnight. He touched them with his fingertip, half expecting them to slice his skin, but they were smooth, almost like veins running across its surface. At breakfast, his mother noticed something unusual. "You look tired," she said gently, placing a bowl of porridge in front of him. Samuel forced a smile. "Just stayed up too late," he muttered, avoiding her eyes. But inside, his thoughts churned. He hadn't told anyone about the clock, not even her. How could he explain that he carried a secret too heavy for anyone else to believe? That afternoon, Samuel walked to the marketplace. The streets were alive with noise. Vendors calling, horses clattering on cobblestones, children darting through crowds. And then, suddenly, chaos. A cart piled high with barrels broke free from its driver, rolling downhill straight toward a group of shoppers. Samuel's heart lurched. He clutched the clock and whispered, "Stop." The world froze. Barrels hung in midair. Children stood locked, mid-laugh. A woman's shawl fluttered like a painted picture. Samuel rushed forward, straining to push the heavy cart aside. It wouldn't budge. He tried again, but it was as though the weight of the world pressed against him. Elias's words echoed in his memory. When you hold it too tightly, it frays. He managed, with great effort, to tip the barrels enough that they rolled harmlessly against a wall. By the time he whispered, "Start," the cart had already veered away, missing the shoppers completely. The townsfolk gasped, some laughing in relief, others bewildered at the sudden turn of fortune. But Samuel staggered back, clutching his chest. His breathing was ragged, his body trembling. When he glanced at the clock, a new crack had formed, deep and jagged across the center. That night, Elias appeared again, as though he had been watching from the shadows all along. "You're weakening," the old man said. Samuel's anger flared. People would have died. How could I just stand by and do nothing? Elias's expression softened. "I don't ask you to stand by. I ask you to understand the cost. Every life you save with borrowed time takes a little from your own. One day, you'll have nothing left." Samuel turned away, fists clenched. "Then maybe it's worth it. If I can give people what my father never had, more time, then what does it matter what happens to me?" Elias didn't argue. He only placed a weathered hand on Samuel's shoulder. "Your father wouldn't want you to trade your life away, Samuel. Not for him. Not for anyone. The gift of time is precious, but it was never meant to be stolen." And with that, Elias left, disappearing once more into the night. Weeks turned into months. Samuel continued to use the clock, though less recklessly than before. He saved children from falls, stopped fires from spreading, even prevented a duel that might have ended in blood. The townsfolk began calling him lucky, as though fortune followed him everywhere. But luck had its price. His hair, once dark, now bore streaks of silver. His hands, once steady, trembled when he wasn't careful. At times, his reflection in the mirror startled him, a boy's face wearing a man's weary eyes. And still, the clock ticked on. One evening, as Samuel sat in his workshop staring at the cracks crawling across the clock's glass, a knock came at the door. It was his mother, her face pale. "Samuel," she whispered, "it's your sister. She's sick." His heart dropped. He rushed to her bedside, where his younger sister, Clara, lay burning with fever. Her breaths were shallow, her skin clammy. The doctor shook his head. "We'll do what we can, but it may not be enough." Samuel's hand hovered over the clock. If ever there was a reason to use it, this was it. But Elias's warning thundered in his mind. Every gift has its cost. Could he save Clara without losing himself? Or was he about to make a choice that would change everything forever? Samuel sat by Clara's bedside, his hand trembling over the clock. The faint ticking seemed louder now, as if it knew the weight of his decision. Clara's small fingers curled weakly against the sheets, her breaths shallow, uneven. His mother wept quietly in the corner, whispering prayers. The doctor had left, his face grave, leaving only silence and despair behind. Samuel clenched his jaw. He could save her. He had to save her. But at what cost? He pressed the clock to his chest and whispered, "Stop." The world froze. The candle's flame stilled, its smoke a frozen curl. Tears on his mother's face hung motionless, like drops of glass. Samuel turned back to Clara. In the stillness, her breathing didn't worsen, but it didn't improve either. Time itself had halted, and with it, her sickness paused. For hours, Samuel sat there, watching her as though guarding her life with his own heartbeat. He whispered stories from their childhood, Though she could not hear, he held her hand, wishing his warmth could reach her. But soon he felt it, a heaviness in his chest, his fingers stiffening, the toll of borrowed time sinking into his bones. The cracks on the clock glowed faintly, spiderwebbing outward. He knew he couldn't hold time forever. So, with tears blurring his vision, Samuel whispered, "Start." The world rushed back. The flame flickered. The tears on his mother's face fell. And Clara gasped, her chest rising with a deep, sudden breath. Her fever broke. Color returned to her cheeks. Her eyelids fluttered open. "Samuel," she whispered weakly. His mother cried out with joy, embracing them both. Samuel smiled, relief flooding him. But when he caught his reflection in the window, his stomach turned. His hair was now streaked fully with silver. Deep lines carved his once youthful face. In saving Clara, he had traded years of his own life. Days passed, and Clara recovered swiftly, unaware of the sacrifice her brother had made. The town marveled at the miracle, but Samuel avoided their questions. He couldn't bear to tell anyone the truth. Elias, however, appeared once more, silent, watchful, his eyes full of sorrow. "You've made your choice," the old man said. Samuel nodded, weary but resolute. "I'd do it again, for her, for anyone who needed me." Elias sighed. "Your heart is noble, Samuel, but even the noblest heart cannot outrun time forever. Already you've aged a decade for a single night's mercy. What will you give when the next choice comes, and the next?" Samuel stared at the clock, its cracks now so deep, the glass looked ready to shatter. "What happens when it breaks?" he asked quietly. Elias's voice was almost a whisper. "Then time itself will decide your fate." The question haunted him. What would happen when the clock broke? Would he vanish? Would the world unravel? And yet, despite his fear, Samuel couldn't ignore the truth. People needed him. Every day brought new dangers, new chances to use the clock. And each time, he whispered the same words. "Stop, start, stop, start," until one night, when the world itself seemed to hold its breath. The bell tower struck midnight as Samuel walked through the empty square. The streets were unusually still, as though the town itself was asleep. And then a shadow moved. From the alley stepped a cloaked figure, tall, silent, radiating an aura that chilled Samuel to the bone. "You've meddled with my work," the figure said, voice like the echo of 1,000 ticking clocks. Samuel's grip tightened on the clock instinctively. "Who are you?" The figure stepped closer, and Samuel's heart froze. Its face was a mirror of his own, only older, with hollow eyes and a weary, broken frame. "I," the figure whispered, "am what you are becoming." The clock in Samuel's hands pulsed with light, as though recognizing its other half. Cracks spread further, glowing like molten lines. The figure extended a hand. "Give it back, Samuel. Time was never yours to carry." Samuel's breath caught. If he gave it up, would he lose Clara? Would all the lives he'd saved unravel? Or would he finally be free from the weight of a gift that felt more like a curse? He stood frozen, staring at his future self. The choice would decide everything. Samuel's chest heaved as he stared at the cloaked figure. His own face, aged and broken, staring back with hollow eyes. The night was silent, almost too still, as if even the wind refused to interrupt. The figure's hand remained outstretched. "Give me the clock. Give me back the years you've stolen. Only then will the cracks close, and the world will heal." Samuel's heart pounded. He thought of Clara's laughter, of the lives he'd saved, of every second he had bought with his own sacrifice. If he gave up the clock, would all of it unravel? Would Clara slip back into fever? Would the sparrow fall, the cart crush, the fire burn? Or would time, mercifully, move forward as it was always meant to? His fingers tightened around the clock. The glass burned warm against his skin, the cracks glowing like veins of fire. "No," Samuel whispered, his voice breaking. "I won't undo what's been done. I won't trade their lives for mine." The figure tilted its head, eyes filled with something between pity and rage. "Then you condemn yourself." The air trembled. The clock shuddered violently, the cracks widening until the glass looked ready to explode. Samuel cried out as the ticking grew louder, faster, a storm of sound beating against his ears. And then, silence. When Samuel opened his eyes, he was back in his workshop. The clock lay shattered on the table, its gears scattered like stars across the wood. He touched his face, bracing for the wrinkles, the hollow eyes of the figure he'd seen. But instead, he looked whole. Older, yes, wiser perhaps, but not broken. The door creaked open. Clara peeked in, her cheeks rosy, her smile bright. "Mother says supper's ready. Are you coming?" Samuel stared, stunned. She was alive. All of them were alive. Time had not unraveled. Instead, something deeper had changed. The ticking he once heard from the clock. He now felt it inside his chest. Not a burden, not a curse, just a reminder. Time wasn't his to control, but it was his to cherish. Years later, Samuel grew into the town's new clockmaker. People came not for magic, but for wisdom, for the stories he told of how every tick, every breath, every shared moment was worth more than gold. He no longer needed to stop time to see its value. He had learned the truth. Time is fragile, fleeting, and beautiful, not because it can be paused, but because it cannot. So if you're listening to this now, remember, don't wait for a clock. To remind you that life is precious. Don't waste your days chasing minutes. Hold on to your moments. Live them, share them. Because in the end, we are all clockmakers. And the only time that truly matters is the time we have right now. And that, my friends, was the story of the Clockmaker Who Stopped Time. If you enjoyed this tale, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you never miss another midnight story. And let me know in the comments, if you had a clock that could stop time, how would you use it?